Hey there, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Scaling Deep podcast. Today, I'm excited to have an amazing guest, Meg Casebolt from Love at First Search. And I'm going to let her introduce herself because she has a membership and just wrote a book and is an SEO expert. And these are all the things I know about her offhand.
There's the introduction. What else needs to be said? I also like Broadway musicals and s'mores, and I have a dog. And, I think sometimes we get these very formal, like, here's your official bio that you would
I know they're actually quite boring most of the time.
Yeah.
So
I run an SEO agency. I try to help people get off of social media.
Oh yeah. That's the other really cool thing about you.
As their exclusive way to market your business. If all you're doing is social, maybe you want to rethink that. And I teach people how to do search engine optimization and keyword research and how to make content that helps them show up in Google. There you go.
Love it. Okay. So, let's dive into I just want to talk about SEO all the time, but I'm not going to. I'm going to refrain.
Cool. We can, whatever you want.
Okay, let's talk about SEO.
Let's do it.
Okay. So I just want to say, and I love announcing this to everyone because I'm very proud of myself and proud of like something working, is that I have worked really hard on my SEO in the last, year. And I shouldn't say really hard. I mean, there was a few months of that year that I worked hard at it.
Yeah.
And I somehow managed to get a small keyword #1 ranked for membership coach.
What's the keyword? Membership coach is an excellent keyword.
But it's small. It's got if you look on the whole, how many searches per month, it's really small, but it is like people who want to hire me for like VIP days, which I love. And of course, I don't have to spend any money on those people finding me, and they're like looking for help. So it's like a brilliant term. So even if I'm like 5 people a month are searching or 2, it's still worth it for me.
Totally. And like, those are people who are very solution aware. Like I have a membership, I would like to grow it, or I would like to start a membership.
And I want to help doing it.
Exactly. Yeah. And I want to do it correctly. And I want somebody to guide me through the process. I would say, we're just going to leap right into this. I would say that that's like a solution aware commercial intent keyword, which is like perfection, right? So even if it's, 100 people a month and you show up number 3, you're still going to get clicks throughs to your website. And then once they get to your website, then they're going to go, oh man, Lisa is exactly who I'm looking for. Yeah. Or no, Lisa's not the right fit for me. I want somebody who wants to grow a huge volume business, right? Like maybe part of that process is them opting out, and you can sort of like repel the wrong people with your content.
Yeah, totally.
But I think always have to be more, right? It can be a keyword that is really small volume that because
to get things like membership site, which are like a million platforms in tech, and it's like probably it would get a lot of queries that wouldn't really be high intent people. So it's just, but the backstory is that I've had my website. Well, it's kind of changed several times. So fine. But since 2009, I had my first website. And I think what happened was I was writing blog posts because that's what you did. And then somehow I ended up being like ranking #1 or 2 or something for Vancouver Business Coach. So anyone in the Vancouver area, which is a big city, would find me. And then I was like, got into copy. And then I actually, from my previous less niched work, I got more sales through that, like through people finding me, local search basically for business coach. And that worked for me. So I had that experience, right? And I sort of know that it's really worth it when you get there. And it's not like you have to produce every day, like on social, like you've got it. Right. You maintain your blog, you do healthy things, but it's not like a lot of work, daily work. And that's what I love about SEO.
Yeah. So I'm looking at the back end of of your website right now. So we're doing this because I'm totally geeking out on this because I love when I can like give real life examples of this. And so I'm looking at, it's one page of your website. You have several pages on your website, but there's one page of your website that's ranking #1 for coaching membership site, for monthly coaching membership, for coaching subscription, for coaching membership, for membership coach, for business coaching membership, right? Like it has 44 different keywords. You rank in the top 10 for more than half of them. You get about 40 people a month from that. And if you were to pay Google ads for it, it would be $130 a month, right? But you have really honed in on, this is the term that people who are ready to give money to a coach would type in.
And it was by accident because actually I didn't know that that was the term and I didn't think anyone was using it, but I had this blog post that I had, coaching membership site. Like, is it time to shift from coaching to a membership site or something like that? That's the thing that started bringing it in. So that was interesting, right? Because it was not really intentional, but I still had all these keywords. I was still doing these things. I was still writing things. Like I worked that system still, right? So I think that's, even though I didn't quite intentionally,
You know,
but now I'm intentionally keeping it.
A lot of people sort of stumble into SEO in this way, where you're like, oh, somebody asked me this question. I wrote them an answer in an email. I turned it into a blog post and whoa, now people are finding me for it. How did I do that? How can I replicate that? How can I reverse engineer what worked in order to create a process or a system? But like, it doesn't always have to be, let me write about this same keyword for the next 50 blog posts. Like you got the post to do what you need it to do. And maybe you went in and updated the post after you realized it was working to be like, oh, I should put another like book a call link with.
I have my link now to my coaching page.
Exactly. So like, this is something that you did once. You can sort of update, you can optimize it once you recognize what's going on. And Google has a feedback loop with you now where you can now like go into, there's a tool, it's free. It's called Google Search Console. You can log in there and be like, exactly what are the phrases? Exactly what position am I in for these different keywords? And how can I include those keywords in different places in order to get more clicks, or what are some additional things that I can create? Like there becomes a two-way street of data going back and forth between you and Google now.
Yeah, which is great because that's the kind of relationship you want to have with Google.
Right. Whereas with a lot of other marketing systems, it's sort of like spray and pray, you know, I'm going to create all this content and maybe it'll go viral and maybe it'll blow up on someone else's blog. Maybe I'll get maybe people will come to me from Lisa's podcast. Maybe they won't.
Yeah.
But it's much harder to get that consistent, predictable traffic.
Well, and I think it's more the strategy too. Like I always say, like, I'll do anything that's a strategy, but I won't do anything just like, I don't mind even experimenting within a strategy, but I still want to know that like something is being optimized based on something else and not just like every day I'm going to do this thing. Like that
it's measurable.
Yeah, measurable. I mean, I don't measure it as detailed, but it's almost still like something can fit into something, you know, rather than everything being like, let's start this from scratch and then do this thing. And then you have to start it from scratch in this thing here and do it in this bucket there. And then it's like constant creation, constant output for like, who knows what it's doing. I'm like, I want to output a lot here and then somehow see it continuing to work.
Yeah.
And I think that's where it's like, I will work on anything that has like a funnel type of project, you know, versus like I'm going to be on 10 social platforms, which, you know, I'm barely on any, and I'm getting into it though. I've just cleared I'm in sort of with TikTok, but honestly, and I don't even know why, because I would never, sorry, I know this sounds terrible, but I would never go on it and look at anything on there ever. I just don't, I wouldn't even like let myself, because I just don't, and my brain doesn't do snippets. It's just not the way I like things.
I can't consume short form video content. It's too overstimulating for me.
It's overstimulating, and it all goes into that sort of like, I know it's entertaining for some people, but entertaining for me can be useless bits of information that I think I need to do something with, because I'm the kind of person who processes everything and tries to do something, come up with a conclusion, a new way of looking at life. Like I have to process, so I can't help it. So I can't take in stuff because I have to process it and it's too much work. So anyway, I'm still on it, but it's become a strategy because I've taken lots of these podcasts and I've found an AI tool that I can then, it's broken it up into small things. And I'm like,
that's awesome. Yeah.
So without having to do all the work, I mean, it takes a few minutes, but we're not talking a few hours to take a bigger thing and make it into small clips. But that to me is a strategy, because it's actual content repurposing that's in a way that's efficient, instead of like what people are like, repurpose your content. I'm like, do you know how long it takes to repurpose your content? Like, it just has never made sense until now, unless you really are large and you have a big team and you can just, I can output all the people doing it. So anyway, I digress. Thank you. Thanks for letting me talk about my SEO and my my soapbox about.
No, I think it's
strategy.
actually a really good place to start because, sometimes people will say like, what is SEO? And I'm like, oh, wait, here's the technical definition and here are the search engines to give some context to it. But what's probably, people remember stories. So if they can go, oh man, Lisa ranks for this one term that only 20 people a month are searching for, but she gets lots of leads from it. Like that's memorable. And it's kind of, you can wrap your head around that in a way that like, search engine optimization is the, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, I see. Yeah, I know what you mean. It's a good illustration of what it actually is. Okay,
Exactly.
so why don't you tell us a little bit more about, well, all the things. So you have a membership-ish kind of program that, why don't you tell us sort of what it does and how you, well, I know it's changed, but just tell me more about it. Tell us more.
It has changed several times. I'm very much similar to you where it's like, is there a strategy that's working? Great, continue to do it. Is it not working as well anymore?
Something.
What are some things that we can adjust and change and evolve? And the industry changes. So why would our programs not change along with them? So I have a program, I would call it a hybrid membership, possibly. I started in 2018. It's called Attract and Activate. The idea is that you attract new people to your website using SEO and you activate them to take some sort of action, like a call to action.
Right, which is a critical piece that a lot of SEO, like pure SEO people probably are missing.
They sort of forget about, there are some business models where all that matters is getting more eyeballs on your website.
Yeah.
So, and more, CPMs and RPMs and whatever. But for those of us that are running memberships, those of us that are solopreneurs, micro businesses, small businesses, for a lot of us, it's not necessarily about volume, it's about relevance, right? We need to get the right people to our websites at the right time where they're ready to make that, whatever that next step is. So that's what I teach in the program. It's basically SEO and CRO, conversion rate optimization.
Okay. It still sounds very like, what's the word, termy, like I don't know what.
And that's why I don't call it like the SEO CRO membership. No one cares, right? Until you figure out how.
Well, they actually, it scares a lot of people.
It's really scary when I start to get too jargon heavy.
Yes.
So I started teaching this as like as a group coaching program in 2018. It would run for 6 to 8 weeks, live coaching sessions with Q&As. And then I did it like that for quite a while and just had cohorts come through every 3 or 4 months, 3 or 4 times a year, open, close, live launch. And then in 2020, when the pandemic started, a lot of people who had been through the program prior to that came back and they said, I'm now like all of my offline marketing is done. I have time to do the work of what you taught me. And I didn't have time to do it then.
Yes.
Which has changed a lot of my messaging now, which I'm happy to talk about. Opinion in that. But they came in 2020 and they were like, okay, I need support. I need implementation support. I don't need to learn how to do this. I need to understand how to do it, but also need help actually getting it done. Some is accountability, but some is like, how can I do this better? Now that I'm starting to actually make these changes, how do I know if it's working? And when it comes to that sort of ongoing iterative improvement, a membership model works really well for that.
Right. Because it's like different paces for people, like trying to get at that in a program. It would be, oh yeah, I've whipped through 10 of these things already. And someone else is like, I can't even get to number 1. And like, you can't, it would be just, it's going to be like mismatched anyway. And I think some programs, that's the challenge with them, right? Is that for all the, the best intentions, everyone's like starting at place A and they're going to end up at place like E, except for the fact that none of them are on the same path and some show up to everything and some can't. And I know that I've always had a fear of that.
Yeah. And life happens, things come up.
Well, yeah. And I've always had a fear of that because as a program runner person or whatever you call it, as someone who has programs, I've always been very uncomfortable. This is like just an admission, whatever. Okay. My language is just off today. Is that I've always been afraid of the mismatch around the intention of people in programs. And I never wanted someone to feel super dragged down by people who are kind of circling around on things that are perfectly legit. It's just not as helpful to the other people who are like raring to go and what's the next step? What's the next step? Because it's always fun to help people who are raring to go, because we're up here with our knowledge trying to get people to come and get up to speed. And so we want to run with those, but then there's also a lot of people that get stuck. And I just have never felt comfortable managing that, because it just feels, and then you're usually charging for it too, right? You're charging quite a bit for that hand-holding support. And then some people aren't going to get as much value. And that has always bothered me.
And the more advanced folks may not need that. So it's like they might get the better results, but not need as much work.
That's true.
I also like what you said about like expecting people to go from step A to step E. But the recognition that some people are going to get stuck at B and some people are going to start at step C and not need as much. And it's really hard to support people who are coming in at different times. And I think that memberships can give you the space to support different tiers of knowledge and different levels of advancement, especially in a strategy like search engine optimization. Like it's optimizing. So it's never going to end. If I'm going A, B, C, D, E, it's not just A, B, C, D, E, it's A, B, C, D, E, C, D, E, C, D, E, C, like we're going through, we're updating, we're improving, we're constantly going to figure out what comes next.
I kind of feel like that's the same with a lot of things though. Like memberships is the same. Like you're building your first funnel and then you're going to build your fifth and then you're going to update it. And then you're going to try something brand new and have a second funnel. Like you're never going to not be building your enrollment system and your visibility system and your sale and improving your sales system, because also markets do change and you might have given people longer to make a decision. And then you might shorten that. Like you're always going to be optimizing this stuff. It never ends. Like, see, that's the thing. Like, I mean, so it's interesting because I might have a similar type of program to yours in that a lot of people come in and they're like, I need to know that I've got this done right. Maybe I've tried it before. It hasn't worked as well. I need the foundations to design the program, to ask the bigger questions about. And that's what I do a lot in my main course is I ask a lot of questions like, so what's the pricing you can live with for a while if you don't get as many people as you think? And are you going to be prepared to grow volume? Just people need to ask, like, that's how they make decisions. They don't get told, well, you should be high ticket or low ticket. They have to come up with their own plans. But then beyond that, there's all the marketing and sales, which is going to be ongoing because the profitability comes in some level of scale, right? So it sounds similar a little bit in yours. Is like, you need to learn some things, but then when you know those things, now you got to keep implementing the things and questions will come up.
Right. And there are some strategies like a funnel where you're sometimes people will sell you as like, set it and forget it. But then once you actually go do it, you're like, no, actually, I need to be going in and checking my
You're never going to,
checking my open rates, checking my click-through rates.
Well, it's great if you get all the sales you want, but if you don't, then you're probably checking it quite like I mean, I'm in a giant mastermind with a whole bunch of people with funnels and we're all working on them all the time. Like there's just, because things change so much that we have no control over, so that you are always trying to optimize. It's just, that's the work, everyone. By the way, if you're running a membership and you're growing a membership, your work is the marketing piece, by the way.
Yeah. And none of it's passive, even if you can set something up and automate it and delegate it, you still have to manage, update, control, report, improve. None of this is ever going to be something where you set it up once and then you just get it as a cash cow.
Which is like the flip side of being on the business versus in the business. Because if you're making the same amount of profit or, after the expenses, when you're one-on-one, you're just have that back to back, but you don't spend the time on the marketing. So it's nice to have a balance. And I like the membership part, which has got that balance. You still do show up and help people, especially if you've got memberships that are a little bit more mentoring oriented, which I believe yours is. So can you tell me
much so
a little bit how it's structured?
Sure. So when people join, they join for a specific time period, typically 4-ish months is typically how we run it, where I will do live trainings every 2 weeks. And in the in-between weeks, we have Q&A calls so that people who are going through the program feel like they can show up, get their questions answered before they move on to whatever that next lesson is. They have time to watch the replay. They have time to try things out. And the Q&A calls are anything that's in the program.
Yeah.
So it's not just like, oh, well, you can only ask questions from week 2 during the week 2 Q&A. And if you miss it, you're done, because, life. But then we also have twice a month, people can submit some sort of website content, website copy, blog post copy, homework, and get feedback on it, where we're doing Loom videos. We have Voxer
And are you
office
sharing
hours.
those publicly? Is that the point, or is it private?
We post them publicly, but no one ever watches anyone else's.
Oh, really? Are you sure?
As far as I know.
Oh, interesting. Okay. Well, I mean, they might. I mean, I would just say that I'm surprised how many people are on watching all the replays of the Q&A calls, and they never show up live, but they're like, oh, I watch all the replays. I'm like,
the
really?
Q&A calls, I feel like, is different than like, hey, somebody submitted this blog post and here are the ways that you can improve your alt text and rewrite your SEO copy and things like that.
See, okay, fine.
I don't know.
It's like being in a hot seat, though. It's like being a fly on the wall to a hot seat. You learn a lot watching somebody.
You do. Yeah. And I think that's one of the reasons that I love running a group coaching program, is that the answers are so dependent on the people who are in the room. And I'm sure you find this too, where you go through sort of like each cohort has something in common. So my most recent cohort had a lot of thought leaders and writers. Prior to that, I had a lot of coaches. I have seen like groups of educators come through that. I don't know if it's like they find me at the same time, or some piece of content hits, right? Or it's just, that's who's looking. I've had groups that are just like all health and wellness. And then, the occasional person who's not quite a fit there. So that way I can say, oh, and here's how this would work for e-commerce, right? But having that context of here's how I would change and adjust these strategies based on who's in the room this time, versus here's the content from the best practice that I teach all the time. It's really fun for me to sort of make those adjustments based on who are the students at any given time.
So you're starting them as cohorts every few months?
Twice a year now. We've moved down to twice a year. So we start in February and September.
Okay.
Because we just found that those are our high enrollment periods when we've run it cyclically in the past. If we open it in summer, nobody joins in summer. If we open it in December, nobody joins in December. So why am I putting all this work into a live launch if nobody's joining then?
Absolutely. Like, you've got to balance the energy with the outcome. And so you're running them as cohort, and then people can stay. Is that so?
Yeah. Okay. So they sign up for the cohort, and then they can extend quarterly for as long as they want to, or they can go to a yearly plan at that point. And they can continue to join biweekly calls, get there, or every other week, I should say, not twice a week. Biweekly is so fortnightly, as my friends in the UK say, so much more clearly than what we do in North America. I know. So every other week we have live coaching calls. So
in between your 4-month things where you're doing like the every other week is the actual training.
Yeah. And then once they extend, they no longer have those live trainings, but they still can have the implementation support, the content,
the Q&A stuff,
or hours. Yeah. The Q&A kind of office hours stuff, because they don't necessarily need to learn. They need help.
No, they don't need
how do I do
and
it?
Are you doing live training for those form?
I do. I've done it both ways. Right now, the way that we're running it is the live training. We also do give the pre-recorded. So if people prefer that, great, go watch the pre-recorded. But I get really good attendance on the live ones. I think we're at a point where people are tired of watching videos on their own and want to be able to ask a question live while they're learning something.
Like learn 5 minutes, ask, by the way, can I know what you mean. Like, I've always preferred that. I like to interrupt a lot because that's how I learn. Like, I can't process something for too long without wanting to like apply that baby step in my head. And if I get stuck on that, the next 10 minutes, I can't take it in.
You can't take it. Right. Yeah. And I think also like our attention spans are getting shorter, and it's getting harder and harder to find time for anything self-paced. And so I think having something on a calendar where somebody is showing up live and you are getting that instant feedback is really powerful as a student. that's how we learned in grade school.
Yeah, except for not at university. So that's where it all kind of went downhill, right?
Still at university, I was always going to live classes.
Yeah. Oh, it's just that the lecture, I mean, depending on the programs and how long they were, like that. Yeah. I mean, I was probably at a bigger one, maybe lots of people, no ability to ask questions. So, okay. So the interesting thing, I want to think through this a little bit because I've struggled. I like seeing people get results. I like hand-holding people through things because it validates me. It makes
so
me
satisfying. It's so satisfying when it clicks. When you watch someone on a call and they're like, I get it now. Like, that's so exciting.
Or you just don't get the feedback when it's not live. Like they're just not, you're not getting it. They may be thinking it, but you don't even know what they're doing. So this is an interesting thing. Like I go through these cycles of like, oh, everyone loves the membership. And then like, oh, I haven't heard from anyone, but they're still loving the membership, but I don't hear from them. So I don't know. So if they're hopping on a call, like you have to sometimes find your own way to get that validation, because if not, you just might not hear from people, and you're not always going to be in a chit chatty membership. Like I've got business owners, they're busy. They're not going to be talking about stuff all day. And they're not like super young or super new. So they're like in their groove, like they need to prioritize. Yeah. So they're not just chatting about a whole bunch of stuff. So they'll go through things and then I won't know.
Yeah.
I'll think they're not finding value.
I attract a lot of introverts because of the nature of SEO being like, I just want to write a blog post. I want to put it on my website. Yes. I want to get traffic for it. Like people who are very efficient and don't necessarily need to beat around the bush and make friends with everyone. Yeah. So it can be hard to get that feedback sometimes and to get that response.
So a live call really helps you know that you're getting people to do the work and getting results.
Yeah. Or at least showing up. Maybe they're not doing the work, but at least they're showing up.
Yeah, but showing up is doing the work because they're learning something. So, okay. So you run that and then you find like, and yours is a little higher ticket, right? Because it is more hands-on. So what do you charge?
So if people want to come to the live version of the calls and have that 4-month experience, it's $1,500. We also have an upgraded VIP version of that, where instead of me saying, okay, Lisa, here's how I want you to do keyword research. And here's how you can find the keywords for membership coach. And here's how you can figure out what the next blog post needs to be. We have an option that's $2,500. So it's $1,000 more, where my team and I will go in and say, okay, Lisa, based on what we see on your website, what your goals are, we think you should write a blog post with the term membership coach. Right. And here's what the title of it should be. And here's what you want to include in that. So that way people will want to hire you. Right. So having the keyword research done for you, but you are still, you're still able to attend those live calls.
You're still kind of very aware of the strategy so that you can do it going forward.
Exactly. So you can sort of learn without needing to create that initial plan. And that's really selling.
That sounds like a great deal.
Anything else. Yeah. Yeah. And then sometimes people will join the like DIY version of it. And then they'll get into it and be like, can I just upgrade and have you do that? And that way I can start to implement a little bit faster instead of getting stuck in the keywords and the strategy piece. And yeah, sure. And we just give them whatever that differential is. It's not a problem to upgrade at any point.
And then afterwards, this is the model though, where you allow them to stay, they can stay, and then they just sort of maybe downgrade the monthly. Is it?
Yeah. So it's quarterly. It's like $300 a month, or I'm sorry, $300 a quarter. It's very affordable.
Right.
Because we just and then, if they continue to do if they finish their plans or they need a little bit more support, then they can come for a second phase of the strategy plan where we'll do it for them, or just hop on a consulting call and upgrade to just the consulting call. Yeah. So depending on how people want to receive that support, we have multiple variations of how they can continue to work with us, but it's all the same ideas. It's just what's the format that you want to receive that feedback in.
So is this really low key for you? Like you feel like it runs fairly easily because once they stay like past that 4-month phase that they're in, or course, they're just hopping into the calls, right? So it's like pretty low key, and then they're self-driving, they're driving themselves. You've given them an upfront thing to work with, so you're confident that they're set up, and then they just have to go through and start like self-lead.
Exactly. Yeah. So, I mean, once they get through that initial training and sort of get their head wrapped around what does all of this mean, those coaching calls, once they've gone into that sort of retainer model of the membership, they're really easy. We just show up and have conversations. I don't feel like I have to prepare anything in advance because it's more interesting to them to get some sort of feedback versus Meg is now going to present this idea. That's not as relevant.
It's access to a thing on a topic that they really want to work on, and they know they have access to and a tether to that work. And that's why that follow-up membership is such a lucrative, easy membership. That's the sales process. That's everything. It's like, they already know you, they've worked with you, they've usually gotten some results, they want to continue, and then they just do. And you don't really have to convince anyone of anything.
Doesn't take a lot of work to get to convince them.
No. Well, there you go. So I know you don't have very long, so I want to ask you a little bit about, I know you wrote a book, and that's good for you. Was it like a really long, take a long time to write book?
I started it in January and it's now July. So
okay.
It wasn't super long, but the thing is that I based it on podcast interviews that I'd already recorded.
Oh.
So I have been podcasting for 2 years. I thought through and I hired my friend Lacey Boggs to help me do the first draft of it, which I had then rewritten and revised to the point where like her draft and the finished product may or may not be the same book.
Right.
But like just getting that initial brain dump of ideas where she sat down and we sat down and we're like, okay, what are the things that we want to cover in an outline format? Which episodes of the podcast would talk about those things? And then she just I actually pulled the transcripts for her and said like, okay, go through and find the relevant quotes and start to tie it together. And she handed me somewhere between 15 and 20,000 words. And the final product is just over 40,000 words, but it was,
how much is that in pages? Cause I have no idea.
It's like 230 to 250 words per page. So like the finished version of it'll be like 130 pages on Amazon.
Okay. So like a little smaller book.
Like it's not a huge, it's not the magnum opus. It's here's what's happening in social media, mental health, entrepreneurship in 2023 based on these anecdotal conversations and the research and my experience and my thought leadership. But it's not, it's
a thought leadership book, which is kind of a
thought leadership book.
Yeah. So it's more about like looking at a different perspective on things as opposed to like teaching anyone technical things, which is kind of what books do, right? They should really just be philosophy. And then if somebody wants to apply the philosophy someday, they can get to know you better. But I'm just always curious because I think that's a great endeavor. And do you feel like how does it work within your growth strategy around your business?
Well, I think it's kind of twofold. The first is that it can be used as a discovery tool that I know because I've done the keyword research that people are looking for phrases like quitting social media or digital detox or take a break from social media or social media boundaries or social media and client conversations. Like I've done the keyword research to know that these are topics that I have podcast interviews on and I talk about on every episode to a certain extent, but having an Amazon book that has those keywords in the subtitle.
It's all keywords, isn't it? Everything you do has got a keyword theme to it.
Well, not everything, but I think that it's part of the strategy of how do you name the book? How do you make sure that there's a market for this before you invest, 100 hours of time in writing this book and publishing this book and designing this book? Like before you do all of that, make sure that there's a market out there for what people want right now. And is there already
keywords
a fit
would be a way to figure that out? Like, I'm even thinking about why aren't I looking up what are the keywords people are looking for like my comeback to TikTok or my start of TikTok or whatever, right? Like I'm not even thinking about keywords. I'm just like, membership. I'm sure people will understand.
I am always thinking about keywords.
And
I think about Amazon as being a search engine. So Google's a search engine. So is YouTube. But
so how do you figure it out on Amazon? Do you just go in and
different tools? There are tools for everything.
All right.
Everything's a subscription software tool. Right. But I want people to be able to find me through the book. But the book is much larger than just search engine optimization. It is, let's talk about the pros and cons of social media. Let's talk about setting your boundaries. Let's talk about tracking your marketing across all channels to see how social media actually works for you. And then let's talk about alternatives if you want to divest yourself, whether that's totally leaving social media or just finding some alternatives to offset your social media needs. Because when the algorithm changes, and maybe you don't want all of your traffic to tank.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think it's really valuable. And I think it's also valuable for people from I don't really want to spend my time here, and then it's like, I feel like I have to, and I don't mind feeling that I should, which is terrible, but sometimes you have to do some things that you should be doing in business, but I also don't want it to be that thing that I have to rely on. Like, it's not the only thing. It's like, it's like, if I had to become an influencer in that kind of shiny, happy way, I could not do it. I would have
I couldn't do it. I would have a day job. But to come back to a point that I put a pin in earlier too, when I was saying, in 2020, people came to me and said, okay, the pandemic hit, I finally have time to do the SEO work. One of the things that I learned from that is, to them, SEO felt like just one more thing on their to-do list. And I hadn't cleared anything off of their to-do list. It was an addition, not a replacement. And over time, the kind of word on the street has been like, how do I get off social media? How do I replace it? And so
people are kind of done with it now that they're allowed to leave the house, right?
Right.
Like, I don't need, this is not my only outlet now. There's actual, like, the world out there. Again.
Right. I don't need to replace the society online. I can now just go to the store again. But one of the things that I've been talking a lot for the last 2 years is not even like, here's why you should do SEO. It's more like, if you want to do SEO, here's how you can make some more time to do it by not being as reliant on these platforms that have a shorter shelf life. So it's a much longer conversion. It's a much more kind of high level, here's how we can change your comprehensive marketing strategy versus like, here's this one little thing that you can do that can get you 20 people a month, right? Like, it's not an addition. It's, let's look at all of your marketing comprehensively, which is a much harder sell.
Yes. But I mean, everything is very strategic, and it's all leading to you having a solution for the thing that they desire in the way that they want to do it. Right. Not,
and never in the Social Slowdown book do I say like, you must do SEO. I say, here are 17 options, and SEO technically is one of them, but it also supports 5 of them. But there's another, what did I just say? 11 that aren't SEO, but they're how I get many of my leads, which is referrals and introductions and podcast guesting and word of mouth and teaching other people's programs and writing a book, right? Like, it doesn't all, the solution is not leave social for Google, because that's just taking all of your eggs from one basket and putting them into another basket. It's more about like, how can you make yourself work across all these platforms without burning yourself out or sacrificing your mental health?
I just thought that sounds like such a wholesome approach. And it sounds like if it'll make people feel better after reading it.
I hope so.
Which is a really nice gift. Instead of feeling like overwhelmed, you're going to be offering a recipe for something that could be a little bit easier.
I think that there are a lot of people out there who are very willing to wag their fingers and be Debbie Downers and say, you're doing things wrong, without giving, here's what you can do instead. Here's an alternative approach that might work for you. So that's what, from the very jump, even the first podcast, I was like, I don't want to just come in here and rag on SEO. I'm not sure if I'm allowed to shit or rag on social media and tell you like, oh, you're bad. It's wrong, right? Like, it is a tool like many other tools. There are pros and cons to everything, but it can escalate. It can be addictive. It can cause anxiety. So what are some ways that you can pull back from that and make sure that you are in control instead of letting it control you?
Yeah. Oh, I love it. Well, I'm so glad you shared that. And I love hearing how it fits within your program, and then how your program works and how you've integrated the best of what you really need to teach. And then also giving access, follow-up support, because those follow-up memberships are the easiest to do. They are the easiest to do. So it's like, there's a lot of people who, I mean, that's how I started my first membership, was just literally like, hey, any VIP clients want to keep we're doing this
what
thing.
is better than back end monthly recurring revenue? You know,
It is.
Without
So
a big launch, you're just like, hey, you still want to work together? Cool.
Exactly.
Let's do it. Right. Like it doesn't
It
have to be
is.
a big sales thing.
Yeah. But it could lead to something, but it's also a really great first one or first start. And and that might lead for some people like me to creating one that is the big, the only one, and more of a front end thing. But that's another story. But thank you so much for being here with us today. Please let us know where we can find you online and your book and all that, and we'll make sure everyone goes and checks it out.
Yeah, it was absolutely my pleasure. Thank you so much. You can find out more about SEO for our agency at loveatfirstsearch.com. If you want to go take a look at that membership specifically, you can check it out at attractandactivate.com, because I love a good vanity URL. And then if you want to grab the book or listen to the podcast, that's at socialslowdown.com.
Amazing. Well, everyone, I hope you guys go check it out for some social media therapy and all that. All right. Well, thanks again.
Thank you, Lisa.